Hey, y'all. The duo here, Brian and Steven, we're back again for, I don't know what episode this is anymore. At some point, we're probably just going to stop counting, right, Steven? But I'm sure we'll keep track one way or another. We're back today to talk about price tricks. So what we'd like to jump into is several different ways that builders can, um, for lack of better terms, finagle the initial estimates or numbers that are thrown out early on in the process when you are still uh, interviewing builders, learning who they are, hopefully gaining their trust to move forward. And so there's more than we can cover in any one episode, but we just wanted to touch on a few here because we hear about it every single day of builders that have done something that unfortunately set the homeowners or potential homeowners expectations in the wrong way. And it's something that we try very hard all the time to make sure that we never misguide our homeowners expectations, which, by the way, is not easy at all. It's a constant challenge. It's something that we're always up for the challenge, but uh, it's hard when we have to set expectations on things that maybe we don't even have 100% clarity on. So that's what we want to jump into today. Stephen, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Great introduction there for episode, 15, I guess, right? But no, I think you said it well, and whether it's builders doing it intentionally or unintentionally, it's just something that we want to open all these listeners' ears to, and just something that they can be aware of as they are price shopping their new to be built home. Being aware of these price tricks, as we're calling them, is going to really help them to go into this with more detail and more clarity. So, with that being said, we'll jump right into it. But the first price trick that we want people to be aware of is builders coming in with low allowances for selection items. So, in more detail there, any selections that go into your home. So let's give some examples there: appliances, tile, flooring, anything along those lines, countertops, anything that could range in level of finish out basically would fall under those allowance buckets. And most builders try to get a good idea of, most reputable builders, let me say that, try to get a good idea of what their clients want to see in their finished home on a scale of, say, 1 to 10, 10 being a very nice top of the line high end finish out, 1 being a very low end budget friendly cost saving finish out. So with that spectrum, one price trick that we want everybody to be aware of is a builder that either knows or does not know your expected finish outs and severely underquotes those allowances on that estimate or whatever price they're showing you at the very beginning.
That's a great point. And one that comes to mind, Stephen, is appliances. Appliances range in price like many things, but very significantly. We can see appliance packages in the range of 15, 20,000 up to over 100,000 if you're going to build, in some cases, a multi-million-dollar house that wants an appliance package like that. And how many refrigerators, multiple washers and dryers, and then there's obviously big brand names that demand a premium. So to your point, just to bring it home a little closer to an example, you have to share those details with your builder sooner rather than later, just to get a more accurate picture on the allowances, right? And so ideally you get your selections done as early as possible, but we understand you have to select a builder in most cases, or you do have to select a builder before you're going to have all your selections made, right? That's typically the order it goes. So you have to be very confident and comfortable with the budgets that are in the allowances for all those selections.
For sure. And I think that's a little bit of uncharted waters or territory for probably a lot of listeners that, a lot of listeners don't know what a reasonable budget is for um, countertops or, tile or flooring or whatever, right? They can go and look at some of those prices of things that they like, but it's really hard to put all that together. And that's where you really comes back to what we always say, right, Brian? But finding a builder that you can trust, that you tell them, you show them inspiration pictures, you clearly communicate what you want to see in your finished home. And then it really falls on the builder to quote that accurately, right? The worst thing they can do is underquote it, and you get towards the end of the build, like we always talk about, and they've misguided your expectations severely, and you have to go over your budget on the home and on your countertops and on your appliances, and every which way you feel like you're just getting hit with overages. And the cheaper builder won out. They underbid the job, they underbid their allowances, and they got the job. But it's not a pleasurable experience for you as you fell for one of those price tricks. So something to be aware of. And I like your example of the appliances, because that's a perfect example. And um, yeah, making those selections early on can clear some of this up. And the other thing too that we like to do really early on before we get a designer and selections involved is just, like I said, that scale of 1 to 10 finish outs. Where do you guys see this home coming in? What's your desired finish out level? Is it a 2? Is it an 8? Is it a 9? Those are completely different pictures and completely different budget allowances that need to be put in there. So yeah, something to be aware of for sure.
Yep. Yep. As you'll see, the whole theme of this, and we'll say it again before we wrap up, is uh, just because it appears a builder has a line item or the total price appears to be lower than another, doesn't mean that it's going to come in lower when everything's all said and done, right? And we've said it before. We're going to keep saying it again in the future, that you have to be very careful. That the cheapest on paper probably isn't going to be the cheapest at the end.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So
cool.
Along those same lines, we talk about cost plus contracts for a second, Stephen. So what we have seen time and time again is for those builders that do cost plus agreements, that they will intentionally estimate low, and maybe not just on selections and allowances, which is the easier place to do that, but we'll see it even on items that, do I just say, there's really no excuse for some of the estimates that are just blatantly low. Stephen, we're aware of a situation. We did not build this. We were not a part of this build or with the homeowner, but we did hear through actually Mike, our father, who was helping these homeowners with their basically overseeing their build with their builder. They had about, what was it, Stephen, $10,000 or $11,000 in the budget for a septic system, which is not even close to what even the most basic, smallest system would cost anywhere in Central Texas. So, it was on paper, and of course, they didn't know any better to ask, and they shouldn't have to, right? I mean, they're not expected to be experts in septic systems. They're not expected to know these costs, like you said a minute ago. I got $25,000 in the budget for countertops. That sounds like a lot. Well, it's really not, right? It goes quickly when you start to look at all the costs for countertops or septic. So unfortunately, these poor homeowners got stuck with a number that wasn't even realistic from day one on a cost plus contract.
Yep. And I think you said it well in there that, these poor homeowners, and most people don't know a reasonable price for a septic on their home, or a reasonable price for trim labor. Those aren't things that normal consumers of a custom home are in the know on. And once again, goes back to trusting your builder and making sure that all those prices are talked through, so that if you are doing a cost plus contract, you feel really good about where all those costs are coming from, and you're not going to be blindsided by a septic system that comes in double what everybody thought it was going to. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, good takeaway there for sure. And I think that leads us to our next point too, which is inaccurate bids. And that can happen in a multitude of different ways. And one of those is by maybe just miscommunication or misguided expectations or failure to look into all the details. Sometimes architectural plans aren't super detailed on, say, cabinet drawings, and a lot of them don't include landscaping. So, there's a lot more left to the imagination on some of these things, that once you come to a builder and say, hey, I've got my final plan set, let's rock and roll. There's a lot more detail that still needs to be figured out, even when you think you have your full plan set. So, that's where a lot of heartache can come about whenever you're working with a builder and they have inaccurately bid something, whether it was, malicious or not. It can cause some heartache, like I was saying, whenever they didn't have all the details, or they didn't ask for all the details, and they quoted exactly what was on the plans, but that's not what the homeowners wanted in the end, right? Very basic cabinet drawing from a standard architect might not be what you were anticipating in your multi-million-dollar custom home, where you wanted to pick all the last details of your cabinet. So just an example there, but every builder is going to have to work through that different ways. And inaccurate bids, when they're going, even if they are showing real numbers, say this is what came back from the cabinet company, okay, well, that's great, but that was based off of basic cabinet drawings from the basic plans that came from our architect. That's not what we wanted. So anyways, not to beat that example to pulp, but yeah, hopefully that makes some sense there.
Yep. Those are really good points. So what you're saying, to sum it up, is just communication, communication, communication. And I think a good takeaway from this is that the plan, every last detail on that plan from the architect, is what we're going to be looking at. And many homeowners, or hopefully future clients of ours or others, I think, believe that they've looked at their architect's plans in detail, but they probably haven't gone even as low as they can with that, right? Even down to your point, Stephen, on which way does the cabinet door swing open? What do you want? What kind of design do you want inside that cabinet drawer that pulls out? Do you want storage for pans or cookie sheets in a certain way, right? And that's typically not on most of the architect plans that we see when people bring us their plan set, when we haven't worked with them from the beginning, right? So another reminder that what we recommend, obviously, whether you're considering building with us or not, is that you pull in that builder during that design phase. Because if we get the plan set after all of this, then there still are so many assumptions. Even though there's a lot to look at on the architect's plans, there's still a whole lot that's missing. So I'm just saying it in a little different way than you did, but really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to add to that is, it's almost essential to loop your builder in during the architectural design phase, but almost just as essential is to loop in a designer. If you're a person that's that particular about the details of your home and the cabinet swings and the cookie sheet storage and all that stuff, that's where a designer would really, really be able to connect the dots and organize everything based on inspiration pictures and colors, and really paint that picture more fully from just what the architect is throwing out there. So to have that whole team come together at the design phase is really, really crucial, that you've got your builder, you've got your architect, and you've got your designer. And of course, the clients, to really bring all those pieces of the puzzle together. So yeah,
Yep.
definitely important points
And
there.
we have for the budget conscious listeners out there that say, hey, I want to be very smart with my money and where it goes. There are a lot of interior designers out there that don't have to cost $20, $30, $40,000. I mean, you'll hear that some are out there and they charge that because that's the work that they do. But we have some interior designers that we work with, and some are obviously much more expensive than others. But there is a way to do this and get their input because it is their full time job to look at some of these things and bring some thoughts and ideas to your mind that even we miss. Right? We're not the designers; we're the builders, and those are two completely different things.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Jumping into our next point here. So another price trick for people to be aware of and look out for. This one in particular actually falls on fixed price contracts. So when a fixed price contract, you have to be very aware of escalation clauses. And in the world of COVID, that was when these escalation clauses were a really hot topic. Of course, with lumber skyrocketing and other building materials going through the roof, no pun intended. Those price escalation clauses were very, very important for both sides. Number one, to protect the builder from losing significant amounts of money on fixed price contracts that they had already locked in before lumber skyrocketed. And so it was a protection for builders, but it also is something that homeowners on the flip side need to just be aware of, right? Be aware of and be real diligent about how you're analyzing those cost escalation clauses. So to dive into that a little bit more, if you have a fixed price contract and the cost escalation clauses are set at a percentage of, say, a really low percent, like 1 or 2% escalation. If lumber goes from 100,000 to 102,000, okay, well, the builder still has to take that hit. If lumber goes from 100,000 to 150,000, then the client has to take the hit of the 48,000 that it went over that 2% escalation clause. So another thing just to be aware of and be real diligent about what escalation clauses are in your fixed price contract and making sure that they're reasonable, right? I mean, every builder has a different amount or percentage that they deem as reasonable. I mean, Brian, you can chime in too, but I would say something reasonable would be 5-10%. Of course, the higher the number, the more that falls on the builder. The lower the number, the less that falls on the builder in those fixed price contracts. So I will say that they're not something that any builder I would imagine would completely eliminate because it's too much risk in a fixed price contract, but it is something that needs to be healthily balanced on both sides.
Yeah. Escalation clauses it can be tough, right? It's a balance, as you said, on making sure the homeowner understands what they're signing on, what this means, the risk on both sides, right? There's risk that is out of the homeowners and the builder's control that just has to be mitigated and managed and understand who is carrying what. So what's really difficult is when a builder has to enforce the escalation clause because it's a complete surprise, right? In most cases, that homeowner is not expecting this, saying, "Oh, I got to make this phone call or deliver this news," and it's going to come as a complete shock, right? In a fixed price contract, especially when we sign them, part of our offer and what we do to differentiate ourselves is say we have a on budget guarantee, obviously with some other exclusions and exceptions because of things that are outside of our control, right? But we've set that expectation there, and then something outside of our control comes up, and that's never fun, right? So they're there. There's no other way to handle them, right? Either it's a fixed price with escalation clauses, or it's cost plus, and so to build this home, somebody has to take on the risk, the liability throughout the whole thing. Right. That's just how it goes. There's no skirting around that.
Yep. Yep, for sure. And another point on that is that, cost escalation clauses are important. A lot of times when you go to get a bank loan or a construction loan for a build, the banks will want to see some sort of variance, is what they will call it. Most builders will bake in maybe a 5 or 10% variance on several line items or every line item of cost for that build. So it's something that banks are aware of, that on a fixed price contract, there are going to be some variances, whether it's in the allowances that the builder has set forth that the homeowners want to go over on occasionally. Um, those banks want to make sure everything is within reason. And I would say, like we talked about, a 5 to 10% variance is what we've seen as, I would say, average, right? There's more, there's less. And that also lines up fairly well with those cost escalation clauses that we typically see of 5 to 10% as well. And I think those are numbers that are fair, like we just talked about on lumber. I mean, if lumber goes up $50,000 or 50% or whatever the number is, it's really out of everyone's control that's involved in that. The builder and the client and the bank. So the only person who really has control over that are the lumber companies. And to get the job done, somebody has to front that additional cost. So how is that handled? And that's just something that needs to be discussed up front, so there aren't any tricks going on with the pricing of the home.
Yep. Yeah. And it's important to recognize, as basic as it sounds, how big is your contract? I mean, when you've gotten through the design and preliminary building steps, no matter how your builder does it, how many pages is that building contract, right? And you'll see that our building contract is over 100 pages long, right? Because we try to be as detailed as possible, because we're, as we said at the beginning, trying to do our best to manage your expectations, keep everything as black and white as possible. Do we miss stuff? Yeah, sure we do, right? These are massive projects with a lot of intricacies, but we do our best. There's a lot of builders that their contracts not nearly as long, maybe 25% uh, as many pages as ours and other builders. So just that alone should tell you something, that why is one contract 100 pages and the other one is 25, right? When I'm embarking on this journey, as we always say, with a builder that you better trust, it is a journey. It's a partnership. So just think through some of those. I know it sounds like it's common sense, but it is important when you say, okay, hey, I'm at this stage and I need to decide on a builder. And even as basic as how many pages is a contract can be a big difference.
Yep. Yeah. Very good points. And a note on that, I think everybody hopefully is aware that, yeah, if something is not in writing with you and your builder, it most likely doesn't count, right? And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. If you try to just have your word versus theirs, or your word versus the builder's word, it's not something that's easily defensible. So just something to think of, and make sure that anything that has been discussed, or selections, or any changes or anything like that, are all documented. That's another thing that can cause heartache and price increases on things that a client believes that they have told the builder at some point, whether they did or didn't, or whether it was on a phone call that was never documented or whatever. Have it in writing, make sure it's documented. And if even better, have everybody sign off on it. Get it on DocuSign. It's so easy to collect digital signatures now. Just protects everybody. So,
Yep.
Little side note there.
We can't reiterate enough how important it is to pull that builder in as early as you can during the design phase, right? And even if it ultimately comes down to the fact that the builder that you worked with on the design phase isn't the builder that you ultimately choose to build your home, you had builder input and hopefully proper or fair guidance on cost estimates as you go through that design phase, right? And that's really, really important, because you want to be able to get to the end, avoid these price tricks, and say, hey, I got the house that I wanted that is within my budget on this piece of paper. We've reviewed all these details and we feel good about moving forward with, hopefully at this point, hey, the builder that we've been working with for some time, or another one that we've been talking to that we feel really good about and we trust. So, make sure you ask your builder for a complete price. And, we're just trying to minimize or eliminate the cases where you're shocked that a final price comes in uh, significantly over the initial estimate, right? Initial estimate being ballpark. The builder's done no work. They're just saying, hey, ballpark figures, this is this. And you say, okay, I feel good about it. Then you go do all the work and then they come in and surprise you and it's over your budget and you're stuck with, okay, well, now we've done all this work and we have to backtrack to make it to where it fits within our budget or whatever it may be. So, it's tough. It's a delicate balance when you're looking for information, but the builder's also looking for information to give you the proper information that you're requesting, and there's still a lot of unknowns all at the same time, right? So it's also about asking your builder what is their process, right? What do they do? How do they organize all this? How do they manage it? And that's why we've hopefully been fairly clear and vocal on our process and what we do during the preliminary building agreement and all the pre-construction work before you ever even start building a home.
Yep. Yeah. Fantastic point right there. And just to reiterate that I think a lot of these price tricks that we've talked about in this episode can be mitigated by a fixed price contract. And like you mentioned, looping your builder in early on in the design process so that they can consult you, can be on the same page as you, and know exactly what is going to be involved in this build. And that allows them to more accurately quote their allowances. And, all that ties together to really mitigate quite a few, or maybe even all of these price tricks that we just talked about. So fixed price, roping your builder in early, and making sure that everybody's on the same page with allowances and what all exactly is being built into that home that you want. And in the end, this isn't supposed to be a scare episode. It's just to open the listeners' eyes and ears that this is stuff to be aware of, and I don't know that many builders do these price tricks or, have these things happen maliciously or on purpose. I think a lot of them are actually accidents or just miscommunication or lack of detail. So I don't know, maybe that's me being naive. I know there are some, bad builders out there that are crooks or scam artists or whatever, but I like to think that most of them are not. And, there really is just so many details that go into any custom home build. And it's really, really tough from a builder perspective to keep all the details straight, know exactly what the clients want. We aren't mind readers, so we have to communicate clearly. They have to communicate clearly to us. And in the end, the ultimate goal is, of course, to get what the clients want built in a timely manner for their budget on their lot, right? And if that's what we can do, that's exactly what we strive to do. So,
yep. And as we hear about or come across or experience other price tricks, we'll jot them down and maybe have an episode 2 here in the future, or a continuation of this, because these certainly aren't all of them. And Stephen, you said that most builders are not trying to do this intentionally, and I do believe that, right? There's there's bad contractors and people out in every industry, but as a whole, it's just that catches builders by surprise. But then, unfortunately, both the builder and the homeowner are in a not so fun place, and it affects the experience as you go through this. So, yeah, we've got plenty more, and we'll jot them down and keep them in our notes or our back pocket for when we have enough for a continuation of this. So, thanks for your time, Stephen.
Yeah, same to you. Great episode. And once again, just to wrap this episode up, like we've been asking recently, but we really appreciate everybody listening. And the number one thing that we just ask from all the listeners is that you guys rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. And however you found our podcast, if you don't mind just sharing that with your friends or, helping us out by getting the word out there for people that would find our content valuable. So we can continue to grow this podcast and get the word out and the education out to more people that want to hear it. So thank you.
It makes our day whenever you reach out to us and tell us what you like or don't like. So please do that. We love the feedback. We love the interaction with our listeners.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, that's a wrap for episode number 15. And thank you all. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.